All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed Nanook of the North. Um, I've seen it several times, and I always find it to be a very engaging movie, beautifully shot, and really, it almost feels like a big Hollywood studio movie. A lot of production value and some really, really interesting stuff to look at from so many different points of view. I had this slide up on film techniques used, and we should really think about all of these whenever we're watching a movie. The cinematography, how it's shot, the editing, how it's put together, the writing and directing choices, why a scene is staged a certain way, and then casting. I find casting to be really interesting when it comes to this movie because Flaherty did cast the movie. And listen to this quote from one of the books. This is the Richard Barsom books, nonfiction film, A Critical History. And Flaherty said this about casting. He said, "We select a group of the most attractive and appealing characters we can find to represent a family, and through them tell our story. It is always a long and difficult process, this type finding, for it is surprising how few faces stand the test of the camera." So that's pretty interesting. It almost sounds like a casting of a Hollywood reality show today. Just are they attractive on camera? And so I guess in the movie they weren't actually a family. There was the main character, and he has a long name. I'll say it in a minute. But not necessarily a family, that unit. And another thing that the book, Betsy McLean's book, confirmed was that Flaherty himself did have an affair with the woman who played Nanook's wife in the movie. So, and some other interesting facts that really, really sad also that Nanook himself, the guy that played Nanook, died of starvation 2 years after the film. And the film was such a big commercial success, and here we have the lead character dying of starvation, when the whole movie is about them surviving, looking for food, right? Shelter, building the igloo. So pretty tragic and ironic that the on-screen star of that movie ended up dying of starvation, and the movie and Flaherty went on to be huge successes. So typically, the movie in documentary film history is considered to be the first prototypical documentary. Flaherty wanted to do a biography of an Inuit family over a year. Some of the books use the term Eskimo, but I believe the Inuit people consider that to be a slur. So I want to use the word Inuit. I know sometimes books have to catch up. But it was a silent film. The music was done in 1988, and the music was done in the style instruments from the Inuit people. And of course, Flaherty employed lots and lots of reenactment in the movie. And again, one of these questions that brings up the question of truth and documentary films. Is this a truthful representation? So, and Flaherty supposedly said, sometimes you have to lie to tell the truth. And I can absolutely see that. I can see him having them repeat the same action for the camera to get the shot. But it does get a little close to being some questionable ethical decisions. Let me see what other kind of facts I may have. So Flaherty took with him 2 Akeley motion picture cameras, and there's actually a picture. So right here, one of the Akeley cameras that he had. And supposedly the Inuit people got really good at fixing the camera. But Flaherty he had a full developing and printing and projection setup with him as he lived there up in the near Arctic, and he was actually living in an attached cabin to the trading post. I mentioned the French company that owned the trading post funded the film. So he chose Nanook, who was the guy that played Nanook. He was a celebrated hunter in the tribe, and of course Flaherty paid the Inuit people to be in it. But he asked them to agree that his process of filming would take precedence over everything else, and that's pretty interesting, over the life being filmed. So, for example, he put them in danger when he took them out to find a polar bear, but Supposedly they almost died. They had to use film to kindle a fire when they were out there looking for the polar bear. You can imagine if you're Robert Flaherty, how great would it be to get a polar bear in the movie? Certainly tried, but didn't quite get it. Also, the guy's name is LACC. That was the lead character there. He and his screen family, quote unquote, were at the risk of dying if they could not find or build a shelter quickly enough. So they had built a half igloo because Flaherty needed to get his camera in there to get a shot. And of course, the building of the igloo sequence is a famous sequence in the movie. But when they actually showed the family in the igloo, it was only half. Also, Flaherty insisted that they not use rifles to hunt. There was that dramatic scene of catching the walrus. And by this time, 1922, they had rifles and they would hunt that way, but Flaherty wanted them to do it by hand because it made for a better shot. Even when they got in danger of being pulled out, hurt or something, Flaherty supposedly ignored their pleas for help and instead continued to film their struggle because it was making for a good shot. So, and then of course Flaherty had an affair with his lead actress, the young Inuit woman who played Nanook's wife. And a few months later, after he left, she gave birth to his son, and he supposedly never acknowledged that son. The son had difficulties, and Flaherty took no action. So, I don't know. Do you think, can you judge a movie without looking at the maker of the movie? I think it's kind of an eternal question with a lot of things these days. But so hopefully those can spurn some thoughts and get you thinking about your post on this discussion. So, documentary represents the historical world by shaping its photographic record of some aspect of the world from a distinct perspective or point of view. What point of view does Robert Flaherty adopt in Nanook of the North, and what are its implications? And these are just things that you could talk about in your post. Considering what you saw in the movie and have learned about in Flaherty's making of it, the casting of the film, the use of reenactments, the questionable ethical decisions, would you consider Nanook of the North to be a truthful document? So I'd be very interested to see what you think. Is it truthful? How do you define truthful? I don't know. Could you step back and say, yes, this is pretty truthful about how the Inuit lived? Or, given the restagings, the reenactment, Flaherty's point of view, and all the facts with him after the fact, I don't know, maybe it does change the truth of the whole thing, and I think you could argue that. So other questions to consider, and these are from the book, and or one of the books. There's actually, I went ahead and put up some sample essays, and let me go back to the Canvas screen. So right here, there's the movie. I am including this this file here, which is some PDFs of some essays that were in the Bill Nichols book, Introduction to Documentary. And these are very scholarly papers, and you can start reading. It's the italicized portion here. But you can read through these and just see how a professional paper is done. And I've done these professional papers on Nanook in this class. Given our online class, I'm making it a discussion instead. So you don't have to go to the extent of writing something very formal like these papers, but I just think they're really interesting to read and to learn from, and you're more than welcome to do something formal in the discussion. And your post could be as long as you like, but it doesn't have to be super long. So anyway, that's about it. And over here I put the discussion up, and there's a rubric with this one. And I'm not looking so much about timeliness. You have a week for the discussion, so take your time. And I'm just, more than anything, looking forward to hearing what you thought of the movie.